Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with poet and musician Elyse Hart, and wow, she's got a lot of stuff coming out, folks. And I just wanted to go through the list here. She is the author of White Noise Crucible by Bottle Cap Press, the forthcoming Poems for Squares, 29 Instagram accounts in verse from Lint Ball Press. And if you're watching this on Wednesday, the 15th, you can get the book then today. Today, if today being the 15th, you can get the book. And just out of the intro there, you just heard her new song, Bad Heart. So I kind of wanted to, well, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And I guess let's just start with that, with Bad Heart, kind of where did that come from, the inspiration, and let the folks know kind of how you put it together.
Sure. It did come out recently, several months ago, but I wrote it probably a few years ago. I was just kind of getting into writing music and making electronic music. So I actually made that on GarageBand. Like I use Ableton now, but I don't have Ableton yet. So it was through GarageBand, and I had kind of started taking music production lessons and songwriting lessons at the time. So I was really, my teacher was really pushing me to work on improvisation. So that song is pretty improvisatory in nature. I think, I was interested in the harp sound. So there's prominently a harp sound throughout the song. Kind of when the beat drops, you probably in the intro you heard the harp come in, because one of my favorite musicians is Joanna Newsom, who is a harpist and singer. So I love the harp sound, and yeah, I just kind of, it was more or less made in an afternoon, and just kind of would improvise one layer and then kind of do one over it. And then I decided, where the section breaks were of the song and like how they could be layered over one another. And then like in different section, like later sections of the song, like I might have taken a part that's like arpeggiated and just made it like solid chords to give it some variation. The song did have lyrics. I'll send the song to people and people will be like, I've been waiting for you to start singing.
I'm guilty of
uh,
that too. Yeah.
yeah, I know. There actually is a version of the song with lyrics and with me singing, but I really do prefer it as an instrumental. So that's the version that I ended up releasing. But some of the lyrics actually are in my top book, White Noise Crucible. And I just kind of was writing, had recently started writing poetry around that same time. So I was, my teacher told me to, put words over it. And I just kind of took chunks of little things I had been writing and posting to my Instagram account, and made those the lyrics. They're kind of nonsensical, but it doesn't really matter because the song that I put out doesn't have the lyrics, but pieces of the lyrics are in the book. White Noise.
Excellent. I guess I just wanted to follow that up and ask, when you're putting together the sections and the soundscapes, I know you mentioned Joanna Newsom, but were there other influences where that particular style influence, like when I heard it, I heard kind of like maybe early 2000s like Radiohead, and there were some other things like Kraftwerk, where there's a lot of things that, like, it sounds like cut up sections, like you're talking about tweaking things like a harp. Was there something else that kind of inspired that in terms of, okay, I want to put it together like this, like something else I might have heard?
So I definitely listened to a whole shit ton of Radiohead during the early 2000s. So that is just probably ingrained in me, in my ears. Um, and blinds. And I listened to Kraftwerk as well as, when I was growing up. So, very astute observations. I think, well, there's a female electronic artist named Caitlin Aurelia Smith. She's contemporary. I think she's like the same age as me. But I I adore her music. I think she's like a modular synth expert. Like she actually like goes and uses those like gigantic like rooms full of huge synths and stuff. So and then she just puts together things in the most nothing like her. She's very, very original and one of my favorite artists. And I actually had the honor of having a couple lessons with her. But it actually came after I made that particular track. But I was listening to a lot of her music at the time. So I would say that maybe she is a heavy influence on that particular track.
Excellent. And what's your primary composing instrument? Is it a keyboard? Is it a guitar? Is it actually just the computer?
No, I'm a pianist. So I grew up studying piano. I took like 13 years of piano lessons.
Wow.
I went to a like arts magnet school for high school. I went to Orange County School of the Arts. Some people here in the LA area know that school in Santa Ana, California. So yeah, I'm primarily a pianist. So I, definitely have proficiency on the piano. I play a little guitar as well. But I don't really play. I'm like a campfire guitarist, but like a bad one, I know the chords, but I'm just like
I can
I
totally relate to that. I can totally relate to that.
totally
I would say I'm a strummer of chords,
drummer of chords. Yeah.
not so much like searing, hanging from a bungee cord, heavy metal Eddie Van Halen guitar solos with power tools or something. That just like that kind of proficiency where you're playing basically with your eyes closed, composing like within the solo or something is I'm more of like a come home and like rough day and reach for the acoustic guitar kind of thing and either compose something or just like play a song but um
Well, the
so
guitar was actually my first songwriting instrument. I think I first started writing songs. Well, the first song I ever wrote, I was 9 years old and it was on the piano and it was more of like a classical situation. But then when I was about 11, I got a guitar and I wanted to take guitar lessons. So I started taking guitar lessons. I was just never going to be good at it. It just wasn't.
it's a totally different thing. I mean, I know that they say that obviously if you play piano you can play with an orchestra because that's the lead composition instrument for orchestra. Every composer you can play piano. But I have to admit there is something really cool about going into a music store and plugging in an electric guitar and sitting in front of an ampliphone. And I would just tactfully say making noise because
Yeah.
my God, they're probably so sick of people coming in and doing that and then not buying something and walking out because it happens all day, every day.
I think the
But
rest was par for the course.
yeah. So, what kind of got you into composing your own things? I mean, because obviously you're saying you're taking lessons, you're learning, but at one point did you say like, okay, I'm tired of playing these classical and jazz standards and like I want to do my own thing? Do you know if there was a turning point or something kind of pushed you out there?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as I mentioned, I took classical piano lessons and I went to, conservatory for classical piano as in high school. Um, and I had a very like love-hate relationship with music at that and piano at that time. Like I really knew it was always my decision to take lessons. Like my family did not push me. Like I think when I was like 4 years old or 5 years old, I started taking lessons, and so did my brother, my older brother, by 5 years. And then he quit, and of course, then I wanted to quit. And then I think a year later, I was like, you know what, I actually want to take piano lessons again. So I told my parents and I was able to take piano lessons again. So it was always my decision, and but I like hated it, because well, and in like the conservatory environment, there's so much competition, and everyone's so much better than you, or there's always going to be someone better than you, usually. And I certainly wasn't the type that was like dedicated to practicing 6 hours a day after we got home from school. And we went to school until 5 o'clock because our conservatory was like,
God.
extra 3 hours a day after our academics. Um, so some people would like were known to like go and get all their homework done and then practice for 5 hours or what, and then practice 8 hours. There were kids like that at the conservatory, and I just was never. I was barely going to be able to practice 1 or 2 hours a day, really, because I don't know. I just didn't have that. It didn't call to me. Classical music like didn't call to me in that way. Like I did love, I do love classical music, but just like it never occurred to me that like I could play some other type of music. And so you ask the turning point, I guess, was a few years ago. So I'm like, I basically, when I went to college, I didn't study music. I basically really didn't do anything with music my entire adult life. And so I was like in my 30s by the time I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to take piano lessons again, but maybe I want to learn jazz or something. And so I found this teacher that's kind of randomly. His name is Michael Stegner, and he's a jazz pianist and teaches. So I went to him like as an adult student, and you know, at first we were kind of like I was learning little blues songs, and he told me, oh, you'll be writing your own songs like soon, and um I I think I found doing the jazz and the improvisation very uncomfortable. I was when you're trained to be like a classical pianist, it's like you're trained to play what's on the page and there's not much room for interpretation, really. I mean, that's an arguable point, I guess, but it really is.
Yeah.
So one day I think I was in my car. I think I was listening to like Brad Mehldau as a jazz pianist, and like I think I was just started, or maybe it was like Tigran Hamasyan or something, and I just kind of started like humming a tune like over there what they were playing, and then I like got out of my car and I was still humming it, and then I got to my piano. I started working out, and then I just write a whole piece. But you know what? It did end up being a classical waltz because that's what's in my ear.
Right.
So that was kind of like the first thing that I wrote like as an adult. But then shortly after that, I started with my teacher. I showed it to my teacher. He gave me really positive reinforcement. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try to write more stuff. And then, I don't know. He was like, oh, excuse me, you should record this. And then he started showing me like the production, then, digital audio workspaces, and how to do that. And then once I was in the digital audio workspace, and I just had GarageBand at that time, I started noodling around. And then he was also having me practice improvisation. And so I don't know, I just got in there and then that just kind of happened.
That's great. That's great. I can kind of relate on a certain level. I have about 5 or 6 friends that have played piano for a long time, and they all kind of have a version of the same story, which, and I'll just say this one song because everyone knows it, but it's kind of like they've told me, um, once you nail something like Moonlight Sonata, it's like an epiphany and it's like, I did it. I learned it. I figured it out. Now I can just, sight read it and I don't have to look at my hands and this is great. But then you get to that level where you're going, okay, well, I can play it proficiently, but it's not my song. It's more of like a parlor trick. It's more like, look what I can do, yay. But you're not talking about yourself. You're not expressing anything. It's just this thing that you can do. So once they started, either playing other instruments or other styles of music, it was just more of like a release because they're expressing their own thing, and they're able to write their own songs. So I'm always interested to hear what that is for everybody. But I kind of want to switch gears while we still have some time, and I wanted to get into poems for squares, because when I first met you at the Hey Hey Cafe, I was like, this sounds like incredible. I love this idea. So I guess kind of go into that for people for a little bit, just to kind of explain the background about how it came together.
Sure. So this is the book cover,
Look
Poems.
at that. That's so gorgeous.
And if you're listening to this podcast, then it's out now. It's on sale. You can go to my website, ElyseHart.com. But anyway, the story behind Poems for Squares is that one day, I think I was talking to my friend Hillary, and it was also around the same time. I hadn't had this like long history of like writing poems or music. I just kind of like started doing this like a few years ago, as had started in my 30s. And yeah, I guess I had started doing that, and I was sharing it with my friends, and my friend Hillary said, like, you should write a poem about Popsicle, her cat Popsicle. And so I think I like went to his, and he has his own Instagram account, popsicle.cat. Go check it out. And he's just a funny looking cat. He has this expression. It's so silly. But so I went to his Instagram account and I sort of drew inspiration from his photos, and then I just put together a very short poem, and it's in the book. So that was the very first one. And then I thought, I was just getting into writing poetry, and I don't know, I wanted to, well, I had always written, I wrote like bad teenage poetry, like, but I never intended to share it. So I guess when I started like my poetry writing journey, it was with like the intention to actually share the poetry with people. So I think I found that writing about Popsicle and his Instagram photos was, really fun experience. And Hillary, Popsicle's mom, was, really delighted. And you see, I have cats myself in the book. Her reaction was so sweet, it was like really got like a sort of like delight. Oh, this is so cute, so fun. And so I posted on Instagram that I would write a poem for anyone who wanted one, and it would be about, based on their Instagram photos. And so really at first I started getting friends of mine or people I know. There's people I know, but I hadn't talked to since high school that are in this book, and still, haven't talked to them except over Instagram to like write them these poems. But there's like a combination of like people I know well, people I used to know and haven't spoken to in person for a very long time. And then when I started writing their poems and they shared them, posted them, then their like friends and followers came to me to ask to have a poem written about them. So that's kind of how that all got started. And I started an Instagram account like for that purpose, which is my Instagram account, Elyse Hart Poetry. So I started the Instagram account. I started posting like other types of poems that were like more, I guess, on the serious side, which is more the stuff that you'll find, in White Noise Crucible. But then there's the Poems for Squares, which are, more on the lighter side, more on the fun side. They have their moments, too. But that's kind of the story behind it.
Excellent. Would you be able to grace us and read a poem after you chug some tea there?
Yeah, sure. So let's see, all right, I guess this one's a little bit more on the sillier side. So I like the silly ones because they're just fun. But to show you, and I don't know, maybe we'll be able to like edit in some of the like, but I'll just,
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll just hold that up for now. But I don't, so this is how the book is set up. You have the poem on this side, and then you have the photos on the side. So This person, I don't know them. I mean, I know I've spoken with them plenty over Instagram by this point, but at the time, like I didn't really know him. His name is Diego, and I think he lives in South America. I know he's moved around from like Venezuela to like Argentina. I don't know exactly where he is right now, but he lives in South America. So we're Instagram buddies, and he draws these cute pictures. So we got some like border collies here, and so this is his cat Philemona wearing a dress, and then there's him wearing cat mask. So we got dogs and cats everywhere. So this poem is called Dog People Want to Be Cats. So it's for Diego Salinas Gardone. I sent whispers down dark country roads. Border collies trailed in tracks of greater beasts. I knew not for what I searched, just that I felt incomplete. Behind our masks, we are not fierce, not cunning, not lovely. We are wholly human. Imperfect creatures grasping into night, the shrieks of inner children piercing the navy sky. But with a mask, we are who we like. And can we agree? Most people want to be cats. Dog people want to be cats. For what does being a dog get you in this dog smell dog butt world? But to be a cat, to shred your enemies to ribbons, and only on occasion endure being dressed in silly outfits. Oh, forgive me my trespass, Philemona. I'll just hold up the pictures again so you can.
Oh, that's so great. I love the one where I don't know, it just looks like there are dog and cat heads just floating above the house. Like in the
I
air.
love his drawings. They're so he draws a lot of he makes a lot of drawings like this, and I think they're just so fun and interesting.
Oh, and I would have to say, and this is hopefully this will make you laugh, but if you ever wanted to do a comedy video, a time lapse, and it could just be you just talking like you're talking to somebody on a Zoom, but you wanted to like speed it up. Oh my God. And if you wanted to talk about something about your cats, because if you did a time lapse speed up, your cats have like run by in the background like 15 times. And I'll be looking at you and all of a sudden I'm like, what the? And they're just so fast. They're just,
I'm gonna put like that chase music they put in cartoons, like
oh yeah, like the William Tell overture or something. Just like, sorry. I just wanted to mention that. I thought that was great. So
totally.
yeah, if you want to read another one, we definitely have time.
Sure. Let's see. My cats, by the way, they are Asher and Fiona Apple are my cat's name.
Oh, Fiona Apple. Cool.
Yes. Another one of my musical heroes. Okay, so I'll do this one. This one was for a friend of mine in real life. Her name's Genevieve. And here are the photos.
Oh, very cool. I like the one in the snow. That's really cool.
Yeah, so these are, very poetic photos. So her dog Bandit, and then I think of she moved back to Vermont now. So I think the snow is like in Vermont, but then I think this is probably like Coldwater Canyon or something like that. And then of course
Right.
the beach. So this one's called The World is Photogenic AF. I live this moment in the garden of life, a garden like an easterly island where I walk the path of eternity and look good doing it. Photogenic as fuck, calla lily so graceful swirls its petals for me. River cuts through tree, sunflower envelops bee. Knee deep in winter snow, evergreen needles tell tales of porgy tails and bandit bears a grin. The horizon burns a sunset into the surf, fleeting in magnificence, time sifting through our clutching hands like so many granules of sand. And the sun keeps setting over Melrose Ave, over my head, behind the mountains, while I stand to see it all from a field of flowers. So I'll show the pictures again. So I think like my sort of technique in writing these are like to kind of almost lean into like poetic tropes a little bit, which would typically kind of be a no-no. Like time sifting through our clutching hands. Like I wouldn't bring that to like my poetry workshop, So I think like the idea of the poems are like to kind of juxtapose like these like hyper poetic moments with like these like silly, like photogenic as fuck moments, you know? So that's kind of my technique. And then a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them I write from the first person of the person I'm writing them about, so that, you know, I'm taking on their voice. And I think people just really got a kick out of that. And they just like seeing themselves like reflected, their pictures and their life like reflected back in the poem.
Oh yeah, it's a trifecta. It's just a great thing because you've got the words, you've got the images, and I think that together where you're not talking about yourself, you're talking about someone else's life experience. It's just a win-win scenario. I guess we have time for one more if you wanted to dig into another one, if you have another one handy. I know you've got the book right there.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking maybe I'd read one from White Noise Crucible.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
So White Noise Crucible is like the opposite of Poems for Squares. It's like,
All about you, right?
yeah, it's all, well, yeah, it's, and then it's very like serious, I guess. I mean, I don't know how serious, but like on the back is a poetic memoir that embraces in few words life and death with all its unanswered questions. It is a grasp for human connection that comes up empty, instead turning toward self-realization and inner peace. So it's totally on the opposite end of the spectrum.
I was gonna say that's almost like a blurb from like a classic literature, almost like a Jane Eyre kind of, when they re-release the Jane Eyre and they do different, covers and things. So
Yeah, totally. So I guess this one's called Apologies, I Come Here with Imperfection. The dissection was by fingernail, the incision through my t-shirt from sternum to gut. I laid unconscious and pale, like a caught fish, my organs palpated by the surgeon's ever steady rubber gloved hand, until they turned silver and shone pretty. I awoke open and bleeding, as is a woman's way. Apologies fell from my mouth like pennies on the floor, the sound of spin rebounding, pounding me all the way home.
wow. Okay, so I'm gonna make maybe an unpopular opinion here, but I think I like that poem the best of the three because it's about you and your experience. But I think the poem for Squares project is epic. So it's kind of like I'm getting both. It's yeah, I feel very
Yeah.
lucky.
It really
Um,
depends, you know, what kind of poetry. I think the Poems for Squares is kind of, you know, a break from
oh yeah.
what people normally are reading. So I think it's just like it's just a fun project and it's meant to make people laugh and smile and, you know, enjoy flipping through the pages and kind of makes, you know, it could be like a good coffee table book
Oh
or
yeah. I mean,
but
I'm a little I have a little bit of creative jealousy that it's like such a great idea that it's like, man, I mean, me myself, I've only been back on Instagram for like a couple of months, but like I'm surprised, maybe it's happened, but I don't know, that you're like the one that did that made the book, from Instagram. Not that, you're not great, but I just thought, wow, thinking about the idea, I was like, wow, I can't believe no one's done something like that in the entire history of Instagram. So
yeah.
so you really got in good. So we've got a few minutes left here, and I kind of wanted to ask you real quick. Um, what is the impetus, or what kind of got you into poetry? Did somebody invite you to an open mic, or they gifted you a book, maybe, or you just heard about something, or maybe there was a teacher that kind of turned you on to it?
Okay. Well, I think I started writing poems when I was very young, probably like 9 years old is the earliest I can remember like writing poems in my journal. You know, I was a pretty like emotional child. And it was just a good outlet for me. I don't remember like what I had read. I remember having like a book of like children's poetry. The only one that I really remember in there was like being like Jabberwocky or something, Lewis Carroll, and poems like that. But so I don't know where I was getting. I think maybe a few years later, I had bought a couple little poetry books from bookstores, like Percy Shelley and stuff like that. So that was kind of like in my early year. And then I think when I was in high school, I had my high school sweetheart had got me maybe it was Neruda. Yeah, Neruda. So I was reading Neruda, but I did not read a lot of poetry growing up. I did write it, and I enjoyed, just writing like my teenage angsty poems in my composition book or whatever. And so like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really get into, oh, and then I guess in college I had some books of poetry from Bukowski and really like Bukowski's poetry, even though I've been rereading it. I know it's very controversial because he's so misogynistic, but I still appreciate his literature and his poems, and I was stoked because I got a poem published in Slipstream magazine where he had been published like 6 times, so I thought that was like a really cool highlight for me. But yeah, I don't know. I just well, I I had gone through something like some bad relationship stuff several years ago, and then like when I was coming out of it, I was like, what am I gonna do to like keep myself busy? And I was reading through like some old poems I had written like 10 years earlier, but I hadn't really like written much since. And then I just decided I was going to and then I started writing again to like help process my feelings at the time. And then I decided that I was going to look for a poetry workshop, and that's where I found the Beyond Baroque poetry workshop in Venice, California. And I went, and that group, they're notorious for being like, they'll tell you how it is. It's not a mutual appreciation group. It's for people who like seriously want to get better at poetry. And so like, it was kind of scary to share my poetry for the first time with people like that and like be ready to accept critique. But they gave me really good very encouraging feedback. And some of the people in the group like um you know I still workshop with those people today, several years later. So I just kind of stuck with it, and because I just kept getting better the more I went to the workshop. And then people were like, oh, you should submit your poems to be published. And I was like, okay. And then I started getting poems published, and just like, just like this positive reinforcement loop where the more I like put myself out there in the world with my writing, like the more positive feedback I got. And I just stuck with it. So yeah, I mean, there were some poets that I'm influenced, probably Neruda and Bukowski, which are like kind of weird duo. And then that's kind of like what I grew up with. But then the workshop is kind of
Excellent. It's a good brew, good mix there. Just a real quick story. You're talking about the Beyond Baroque workshop. I went there a few times, and I think one of the last times I went a few years ago, oh, this had to be like 7 or 8 years ago. And I was like, because I'm a fan of brutal honesty, but you're talking about how, they'll cut you to the core. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to bring three. I'm not going to say anything about your three poems. I'm not going to say anything about them. I'm just going to say, hey, I'm working on these. And one of them was a published poem
okay.
that, I had published like a year before that or something. I'm like, well, I'm just curious. And that's the one they ripped to shreds the most. And I was like, okay. I'll
Yeah.
take it home and see what I can do with it.
I mean, you have to like decide who you're going to listen to in the group, because everyone has a different perspective, and you come to know those people's poetry, and you decide, well, I like this person's poetry, and I respect their opinion a little more than this guy who always shits all over my work, or maybe you do
I'm going
listen
to
to
keep
the
it
guy who
away
shits
from
all over your work.
the heavy artillery at the other end of the table. So believe it or not, we are running out of time, but I wanted to give you a minute to just let the folks know where they can find you and access your work and kind of what you have coming up here.
Yeah. Okay. So the Poems for Squares, well, both of the books are available on my website, ElyseHart.com. That's ELYSEHART.com. And Poems for Squares, you can also find that on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, but I really prefer if you buy it from my website. And in terms of readings, I will be reading at the Ladies of Courage Festival in West Hollywood. That's the weekend of March 25th and 26th. I don't know which day I'm reading yet. I'm yet to
That's
hear,
always
but
fun. Yeah.
if you follow my Instagram account at Elyse Hart Poetry, ELYSEHART Poetry, you'll definitely be getting updates from me. I have a reading coming up in April at the Ugly Mug in Orange, and then I have a reading in May at the second Sunday series poetry of which is up in the hills or something. So yeah, definitely follow me, and you'll be getting all the updates you ever wanted.
All that and more. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for being on the show.
thank you, Eric, for
It's
having
been,
me.
yeah, this has been great. Like I said, I enjoyed both books. I'm looking forward to nothing but the best from you. And thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Bye now.
Bye.